All right, let's get this out of the way. I've never played Path of Exile 1. I never beat the campaign, I never ran a map, and I never even crafted a single item. Fast forward to 2025, and now I'm a certified PoE 2 addict. I'm over 1,000 hours deep since launch. Naturally, over time, I started to wonder, if PoE 2 is this fun, how good was the original? So I went back into the belly of the beast. No build guides or tutorials, completely blind, to see what I've been missing out on this whole time, all to bring you the most accurate first impression I could. My goal in this experience is to give PoE 1 the fighting chance I never gave it before. Complete the campaign, hit level 80, clear some maps, craft some items, ascend a few times, and poke around in the secrets of the Atlas expansion, all while relying only on what I've learned in PoE 2. What I found? Let's just say it wasn't what I expected at all. This is my brutally honest, slightly confused, and occasionally terrified journey through Path of Exile 1. A story told through the eyes of a PoE 2 player who thought he was ready. I wasn't. After downloading the standalone client and launching the game, I was faced with the first and most important decision you have to make in an ARPG. What class should I play? I picked the Mercenaries League and SSF because pain builds character. But at the character select screen, I was surprised. No class info, no descriptions, nothing. Just vibes. I went with the Marauder, who looked like the classic warrior type. I named him First Time Freddy, and I jumped right in. I woke up on the beach and got hit by something immediately. Absolutely terrible graphics. I was playing on a gaming laptop with a 3070, and this game looked like Diablo 3 in 2013. I almost uninstalled right then and there, and 10 minutes of tweaking my graphics settings didn't help. But I was committed, so I pushed on, eyes bleeding, shuffling down the beach. The click to move controls took a minute to get used to, but 2 decades of Diablo 2 muscle memory kicked in, and I got adjusted pretty quickly. The tutorial was pretty standard. Kill zombies, loot, learn about skill gems, and fight a boss, which I totally didn't die to and killed without getting hit once. After reaching town, updating my drivers, and restarting my laptop, it magically fixed the visuals. Now the game looked surprisingly great. The NPCs were impressively voice acted, adding character.
Hey Exiles, I just got back from a nice quick trip to Canada with my family.
Then came a big shock. No gold except for gambling. The economy and trading with NPCs utilizes currency items only. My inner SSF hoarder kicked in hard, picking up and selling everything like a true loot goblin. Oh, and I have to point out this huge win. All of my stash tabs and cosmetics from PoE 2 carried over to Path of Exile 1. Massive respect to GGG for this. At first, I was a little confused by the flasks. 5 slots, each with different uses. But soon I appreciated the customization. The Quicksilver flask was a game changer, especially paired with Leap Slam. I wasn't sold on the skill gem and socket system though. It felt a bit clunky and added quite a bit of friction when I was trying to experiment with new skills and support gems. There's quite a bit to say here about this, but we'll come back to this later. The new mercenaries reminded me of a better version of Rogue Exiles in Path of Exile 2. As an SSF player, I refused to hire them, so naturally, I killed them all for their loot. And sometimes, they killed me. Hardcore would have been brutal. Overall, my first impressions were pretty solid. Generally speaking, PoE 1 feels like PoE 2 on crack. Faster, louder, and way more chaotic. By level 6, I was leap slamming through mobs, chugging my Quicksilver flask like a drunken maniac, and nuking packs with a massive Sunder hit, which I must admit feels so much better than the PoE 2 version. It's safe to say I was having fun, and armed with only my extensive PoE 2 knowledge, I blinked into this intimidating game blindly with relative ease. Now, I hate to say this, but after 10 acts, The campaign felt like a marathon.
That's not Grandpa, Dad's just dehydrated.
It was a slow grind where I kept asking,
Are we there yet?
No.
Are we there yet?
No.
Are we there yet?
No.
The early acts flowed nicely, and I was having fun learning the game, completing quests, and familiarizing myself with the systems. But by Act 6 or 7, fatigue hit. Environments blurred, the story felt like background noise, and bosses and monsters lacked memorable mechanics. Content was abundant, but the structure felt repetitive. It was like scrolling through the massive skill tree, but every branch just led to a slightly different version of Fireball. It also didn't help that I was over-leveled most of the way, so the campaign was easy except for a few bosses. This just happened naturally too, by just playing the game and completing the main story and side quests. Bosses were also very underwhelming for the most part, and I finally understood why people compare them to glorified rares. There were some pretty epic moments, like Malachi or Kitava for example, but the vast majority didn't follow suit. Still, the campaign forced me to interact with core systems, vendor recipes, currency, items, and skill gems, all of which were valuable for SSF play. I also found some pretty sweet unique items that I equipped, which provided my character with some interesting abilities during my campaign playthrough. However, I felt like the constant introduction of league mechanics throughout the campaign distracted from the story, making the narrative feel secondary and making the campaign feel more like a giant tutorial for all of the various endgame systems and mechanics. I also wish that the crafting bench appeared earlier. It felt too hidden until too late. More obvious early nudges would have helped, or just having the bench in each of the town hubs from the start would have been nice. Ascending via the labyrinth was interesting. I appreciated the small hidden trials within the various campaign zones, which created a sense of intrigue. I definitely wasn't in love with the labyrinth though. I didn't like how it was an identical trial except for the final boss arena in each ascension difficulty that I progressed through. So yeah, the campaign is long, kinda bloated, and honestly outdated in some areas, but it is also packed with depth, and it taught me as much as I can handle about the game. By the time I reached Act 10 though, I was mentally done. I was still having moments of fun, but my enthusiasm was wearing thin. Still, I powered through and hit maps, and I'm really glad I did, because what came next finally felt like the game opening up again.
It's over.
I hit level 80 after about 30 hours playing a home-brewed Sunder Juggernaut, which focused on physical damage, endurance charges, and AoE, which was balanced defensively through a mixture of my items and passive tree nodes. It honestly felt great, and I cruised through the campaign up to T6 maps with pretty much no difficulty. I could have kept min-maxing my gear and character to improve my life, defenses, and damage, but over time, I just lost the desire to. Path of Exile 1's endgame is incredibly complex and content-rich, almost intimidatingly so. Every map felt unique with its own layouts, mechanics, and encounters. And there are a multitude of various league mechanics and systems to interact with that have been added over its 10-year development process. But all of this content as a new player made PoE 1 feel dense, maybe too dense. It has so many systems and mechanics layered on top of each other. I wasn't sure where to start, and I was worried that I was missing out on something. Some of these league mechanics and systems even have their own crafting benches, and I had a hard time figuring out the most optimal system for crafting my perfect upgrades. The crafting in PoE 1 is incredibly deep and deterministic. Items can be heavily customized from their original form. Even the standard crafting bench is so reliable for filling in gaps in resistances, defenses, life, adding sockets, or increasing damage. But with more complexity came confusion. Currency orbs combined with league-specific crafting and multiple benches made crafting a bit overwhelming. I wasn't sure what to use or when. Even beginning to start learning the ropes seemed like a massive time investment. Still, I loved the Atlas progression. Unlocking points via completing maps felt rewarding, and I could tailor my endgame to what I liked. I also loved the Scarab drops, which allowed me to further customize my mapping experience by adding different lead mechanics that I enjoyed. I also loved that map completion is achieved through boss killing, despite the bosses not even being that enjoyable. After completing the campaign, the Path of Exile endgame feels like you're being dropped into a vast, deep ocean without a life jacket. You're expected to build your own raft while treading water, and honestly, I just didn't have the energy. The core loop of running maps and farming loot is fun. I can definitely see why players get hooked, and I'm sure I would have if I spent more time there. But for me, the deeper I got, the more I thought about PoE 2's cleaner systems and lower mental overhead. I wasn't quitting because the content was bad. It's honestly quite the opposite. I was just getting exhausted. After playing the game for 30 hours, logging into PoE 1 started to feel like work, and I started recognizing that I needed to put in a lot of work to fully understand and appreciate everything. I know. It's tough to compare a decade-old game to one that's still in early access. But these comparisons are meaningful. Let's break them down. Surprisingly, the new player experience in Path of Exile 1 was better than expected, but still falls quite short compared to PoE 2. The biggest issue? Information overload. PoE 1 bombards you with mechanics early on and explains very little. League content throughout the campaign, currencies, crafting systems, socket lengths, it all hits you really quickly and with pretty minimal guidance early on. I can definitely see this being a filter that stops a lot of new players in their tracks before reaching the end game. It almost took me 20 hours of relaxed gameplay to make it through the campaign. Despite never playing the game before, I still had my 1,000 hours of PoE 2 knowledge, which helped immensely. This will probably take a new player much longer, if they end up making it through it all. By contrast, PoE 2 actually nails the pacing in my opinion. It introduces mechanics one at a time, just when they become relevant. That thoughtful structure lets players absorb systems naturally while enjoying the best polished and most narrative-driven campaign in any ARPG that I've ever played. In PoE 1, the campaign feels more like a tutorial sandbox for endgame systems than a standalone experience. Instead of building impactful story moments and boss fights, it interrupts your flow with mechanics that you're not prepared or didn't ask for. PoE 2 gives you space. You feel guided by the main story quests, but not overwhelmed. And most importantly, in PoE 2, it feels like you're playing a game, not studying for one. Control preference is subjective, but for me, PoE 2's WASD system is a clear winner here. Especially on ranged or caster builds, separating movement from aiming gives much more fluidity and precision. Kiting, dodging, repositioning, it all just feels better. Click to move in PoE 1 has that nostalgic Diablo 2 feel, and once you adapt, it's pretty snappy. But it puts more strain on your mouse hand and gets a bit fatiguing over long sessions. PoE 2's movement feels modern and ergonomic by comparison. One thing that I missed dearly was the dodge roll. In PoE 2, dodge offers a universal, responsive defensive tool that enhances moment-to-moment gameplay. In PoE 1, movement skills do exist, but the lack of that same flexibility or safety net is obvious. Once you've felt the freedom of the dodge roll, it's hard not to have that. Overall, PoE 2's movement gives you a bit more options and flexibility, especially for squishy builds. Click to move still works really well for PoE 1's design, but it's harder on the hands and a little less flexible. In my opinion, PoE 2's gem system is a massive improvement. In PoE 1, skills and support gems are socketed into gear, making it unclear if upgrades are about sockets first and stats second. I passed up on good gear repeatedly because I couldn't maintain my socket setup. Chromatic orbs were scarce and experimentation felt punished. Path of Exile 2 fixes this. Skills and supports are separate from gear, letting you swap setups freely without needing to match socket colors. It encourages experimentation, especially for new or SSF players. That being said, PoE 2 still has its quirks, like how it's annoying to have to revisit early acts to grab missed, low-level skill gems for certain builds. A gem vendor system like what PoE 1 has that scales with your level would go a very long way here. Passive respecking is another huge contrast. In PoE 1, you're given some refund points and can buy more with Orbs of Regret, but changes feel expensive and rigid. I found a great one-handed unique mace early on in my PoE 1 journey, but I had already invested heavily in two-handed nodes. The heavy cost of respecking made it feel unrealistic to even try switching so I could try out this mace. PoE 2 uses gold to respec and it's relatively abundant. you can pivot your build mid-campaign without completely derailing your progress. That accessibility rewards curiosity and lets players iterate more freely. PoE 1 asks you for commitment.
Large poor Vu.
PoE 2 lets you evolve. Path of Exile 1's campaign progression just felt off to me. I constantly was over-leveled for zones, steamrolling enemies with a decent weapon, movement skill, and a Quicksilver flask. It was fun for a bit, but over time it started to lack tension or any sort of struggle. Then came the endgame, and the difficulty ramped up hard. Suddenly I was planning around map mods, resistances, and crafting. The campaign and the endgame almost felt like two entirely different games. In contrast, Path of Exile 2's progression is slower and more rewarding. You start off weak and slow and feel every upgrade and really earn your power. That pacing creates a sense of meaningful growth, and in my opinion, your character's arc feels like a real journey from Castaway Exile to Demigod throughout the campaign into the endgame seamlessly. PoE 1 feels like you were just supposed to blast through the campaign to get to endgame as quickly as possible so that the real progression of your character could begin. While I didn't explore in depth all that Path of Exile has to offer in terms of crafting, I can safely say that PoE 1 is the clear winner here, but not simply because it has more crafting. While PoE 2 is moving in a promising direction, its systems still feel incomplete. GGG is working to balance determinism while still prioritizing loot on the ground, but it's still not quite there yet. PoE 1's crafting is vast. Essences, beast crafting, bench crafting, various currencies, it all adds up to an intricate, rewarding system that allows for fine-tuning and long-term planning. Even with just 30 hours, I saw how deep this goes. It's not beginner-friendly, and it can be overwhelming, but the mastery it offers is undeniable. PoE 2 may one day offer a streamlined but deep alternative, but for now, PoE 1 is the king of crafting. Despite only dipping my toes into PoE 1's endgame, I can tell it's the game's strongest feature. The Atlas system, league content, and endgame specific crafting tools form a massive sandbox of unique encounters and choices. It's content rich and endlessly replayable. Yes, it can be very dense to bite into at first, but even a taste of it made me realize the depth and complexity that PoE 2 could one day achieve. Grinding Gear Games has already improved PoE 2's endgame significantly since its launch in early access, and it's clear they're still iterating on it. If GGG can take PoE 1's decade of endgame design and wrap it in PoE 2's structure and polish without adding too much bloat, we'll end up with something truly special. A game that honors its roots, but modernizes its systems for a new generation of players. Jumping into Path of Exile 1 completely blind, armed only with 1,000 hours I've poured into PoE 2, was honestly a way better experience than I expected. I'm not gonna lie, I was pretty intimidated going in. PoE 1 has this reputation, this aura of, if you don't follow a build guide, you're gonna break your character and hate your life. And yeah, I definitely saw some of that fear floating around leading up to the 3.26 launch. But once I actually got in and started playing, all of that fear just melted away. This is because nothing really beats that feeling of discovery on your first ARPG playthrough. Learning systems by playing, getting surprised by mechanics, figuring out how to craft items and build your character, that's the real magic. And Path of Exile 1, for all its complexity and quirks, absolutely delivered on that sense of exploration. If you've never tried it, I genuinely recommend giving it a shot. Even if you've only played PoE 2, there's a ton to learn and appreciate here. And it really did help me to appreciate PoE 2 even more. So, do I still prefer PoE 2 overall? 100%, for all the reasons I covered earlier in this video. The smoother pacing, cleaner systems, and modern controls. But that doesn't mean I'm done with PoE 1. It's a really, really good ARPG, especially if you've been playing it for a long time. And I fully planned to jump back in from time to time. Probably with a build guide next time, just to see how deep the rabbit hole really goes. Which game do you prefer more, Path of Exile or its sequel? Are you a PoE 2 Andy like myself who decided to try out the original game for the first time? I'd love to hear from you in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, drop a like, it helps way more than you think, and make sure to subscribe for more PoE 2 content. Also, check out my podcast where I sit down with a bunch of different PoE 2 creators and discuss the game, life, and everything in between. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Until then, I'm going back to blast some more PoE 2. Peace.